relationships.
Sure, they're fun.
They're super fun. Is it possible? I mean, you're obviously where you're at, freedom on the freedom spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need someone that's like, how does a relationship work with you? Do two people need to be on the journey of self-reflection together for it to work? Like, what's the formula?
No. I once did a very short post where I did Q&As or Ask Me Anythings on Instagram, and I think the question was something like, how do you know when you found the right one? And my response is, they're all the right one. Because they're right for where you're at in terms of what you're requesting to be revealed through that person. So it's always a mirror, right? So I wouldn't say that, and again, it sort of speaks to, it's a great question, but it speaks to a little bit of Kelly's mind, right? Which is trying to get things right, right?
That's why I have this dang podcast.
Exactly.
Figure it out.
I'm going to get all the answers. And no, so for me, it becomes so redundant, not in a way to dismiss your partner, but to realize that at the end of the day, everybody is simply a reflection for where we're not free. And so it doesn't matter who you date, whether you marry, whether you don't get married, you get divorced, you get married again. It's really irrelevant. And that is in no way to, as I said, to diminish or to dismiss the significance of commitment to other humans, right? Like, you don't want to just be using people as like, well, I'm going to date you for as long as I need until such time that I'm free, and then I'll find somebody else. Like, I want people to honor their word, and especially when it comes to vows. And that's something that I've had to look at myself, right? Is like, what are we a stand for? What are we really committed to in the way that we make a declaration to another human being? So whether someone's doing the work or not, that's often a question I get from people who might come to one of my masterminds or a workshop or where I speak. They're like, how do we deal with somebody who isn't willing to do the work whilst I'm doing the work? I'm like, great, awesome, because now you get to do more work because I can hear judgment in your voice. So there's the absence of love, because what you're saying is, if only my partner would do the work, I'd be happier. That's a lie. Right? So now you get the opportunity to incorporate and develop and evolve into a much more loving being. So it really, I know it sounds, again, sort of a little bit crass or callous, but it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter who you date, because you're going to be exposed to what you still haven't transcended. Now, of course, it's so much nicer to date somebody who you're attracted to, who you have fun with, you have shared interests, your lifestyles are somewhat commensurate. But at the end of the day, as it relates to emotions and spiritual evolution, you're going to get triggered. So what I've discovered for myself is, and of late, and certainly what I've gone through in a relationship, is I'm more in love with the person that I was with, who I thought was the biggest catalyst for my upsets and triggers because of their behavior, because it triggered me. Mm-hmm. Right? That's unusual, right? Because I've realized the man I'm becoming and the man I'm growing into is only by virtue of who they were, versus this copiaesthetic, really sweet, nice, kind person who never really has anything confronting to say. That's like walking into the gym and giving you 2-3 pound dumbbells and say, okay, like, let's pump out 10 curls. You're like, okay, then what? Like, there's no resistance there. There's nothing that's causing you to grow. Yeah. So I would, and this is why we could argue the old adage of, opposites attract. And I would argue because that's where you're going to get your buttons pushed, because of the conflict.
Teary? Are you getting teary about your old relationship?
No, okay. No, I'm happy to, but not in this case. That was just an itch.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm very moved by it. I really I'm proud of the man I'm becoming, courtesy of that, for which I just really acknowledge this woman, because it's the first time I would say that I've really been confronted in a way that was discomforting, that I felt like I couldn't handle, which was the opportunity for me to learn how to handle, which was the invitation to become a real man.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
New way of looking at things.
Yeah, versus like it's cutting something out because it doesn't work for you, as opposed to how can I become a big enough being to deal with it. And of course, there's, there's a sliding scale. I mean, if someone's being abused, like, that's really not the growth domain. You don't want to stick around and say, oh yeah, see how many fucking slaps around the face I can handle. It's like, this is obviously everything within the comfort of your own evolution and the speed with which you're willing to look at things. But for me, I can handle and tolerate quite a lot, and my capacity to have a bandwidth for somebody else's, in this case, we could argue dysfunctions or traumas that are being expressed and spilling out onto me. It doesn't mean that you want to put up with something, but you have to make a decision as to what you're willing to use as a catalyst for your own growth versus something that just doesn't work for you,
That's the question. How do we know the difference? Like, at what point do we stop growing and go, this is just not a energy I want to be in?
Well, that's where you have to, through conversation, see to what degree then does somebody want to also be accountable and responsible for their behaviors. And that's through the vulnerability of saying, hey, I can see my part in this, the co-creation of the relationship, but I also am curious to what degree are you willing to chip in here and see that your behaviors aren't conducive to us having a loving, fulfilling, kind, respectful relationship. And if someone can take accountability, that to me warrants, sticking around.
Yeah.
Say thank you for doing your part. I'm going to do my part. That to me is the beauty of a real relationship, is that you're both committed to growing, courtesy of each other's stand for the overarching sense of love and the chalice that you've decided to sit in together. Can you sit in the fire together such that you can both rise from the ashes of your own trauma and your own histories that was always present prior to even knowing each other? And
that's like the controversy with marriage is 50 or more % and in divorce it's like there's something good about that container as so that people don't just run. It's like, but you have to be conscious of the fact that, like, oh no, this is we're at least committing to the point of, like, let's do the work and take accountability and grow until, as long as we're meant to grow together. But most people don't use that container that way, and it's just, so.
Yeah, it's tough, and again, I say it with all the compassion in the world, but most people just don't want to be responsible for their existence. The predominant state of mind is a victim. And for most people, it's really justified. Like, if you knew my dad and he was an asshole, and you knew my spouse, she's a bitch. And, it's like people really think that the way that they view life is through the lens of, I am at the effect of life. And there's just the absence of both accountability, responsibility, and personal power that, like, for whatever reasons, I've attracted these circumstances for my own growth and evolution. It's just most people don't look at it that way. That doesn't mean you have to stick around and tolerate things. I think that's where women fall short, right? The resilience of a woman is just something that a man can't fathom, right? It's just incredible. Like, truly, even as a woman, then I give a little bit more kudos to mothers, just without wanting to anyway dismiss women generally, but the capacity of a mother to withstand physical pain just by virtue of childbirth is something that most men just can't even comprehend. And so what happens, unfortunately, is because of that capacity to withstand pain and subsequently suffering, is women will go from this position of, like, inherent natural resilience to psychological tolerance. And it's a disservice to both themselves and their partner, where they're learning to put up with something because they can, versus using their resilience as a form of being a stand for something in the way that they get treated with respect and love and kindness. There's obviously some buffer in there in terms of, okay, we want to occasionally hold the little child of our partner, the man who can be vulnerable enough to sort of feel shy or embarrassed about something that didn't work out, and the woman can step up and say, I gotcha. But she doesn't want to have a third or fourth child who's represented as a husband, right? And conversely, the other way around. If the woman is having a bad day, or just the chemistry of her body each month, is feeling very emotional, can the man be strong enough to just hold space and not take what she says personally and be affected like a little boy who's, all butt hurt, And so I think that's the beauty of a relationship. It's just, rather than being 95% a woman and 5% a little girl and 95% a man and then 5% a little boy, those roles tend to be reversed, where, I'm going to give more credit to the woman. The women tend to be more mature. And so invariably, okay, maybe you got 50-50 with a woman, but it's 5% a man and 95% a boy, and that dynamic's just not going to work. And this is why we have, these boss women and the masculine that's being way too far expressed in the feminine. And it's like leading to all sorts of stress and pressures and imbalances and dysfunctions. I'm not saying we should adhere to a traditional model, but there's something beautiful about the archetypes of the man who's the rock, who provides the stability and the safety, and the woman who gets to express her divinity through this endless forms of dance and clothing and handbags and shoes, and just the beauty of her self-expression, which includes nurturance and supporting the family in a way that is really just about love. But there has to be the container for her to feel safe enough to be able to do that. And I know I've fallen short in my past relationships, and that's something that I'm willing to look at and be accountable for.
Thank you for listening to the Heal with Kelly podcast. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. And make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. Oh, and if you found this episode inspiring, please rate, review, and share Heal with Kelly so that we can grow our audience and reach more people. We truly appreciate it. Lots of love.